Okay, you're ready to get working on a practice canvas. Like I said, this canvas paper works great, guys. I really do like it. And it's really going to give you a nice feel and almost even a little bit smoother than a canvas, especially the cheap ones. And you can see that I didn't do any gesso to it. I just went and did one coat of black and that's it. So there's no real pattern to this, guys. It's just placement on where you want to put things, all right? So I did tell you I was going to simplify things a little bit. So if you want to go and count how many stems there are and put them all in there and add all these extra leaves in there, definitely, the more the merrier, put them in there. But just for the basic repetitiveness, because it is a little bit repetitive, and it's just about the amount that you want. So if you actually only want to put 3 of them in there, you could. All right, so if you want to put 5 of them in there or whatever you want to put in there, that's totally up to you. Okay, usually we put like odd numbers, and sometimes a little bud doesn't count because if it's just a little filler or a little extra little one in there, you don't have to count it, but you can. But usually after 5, we don't count anymore. So if it's less than 5, you can put 3 or 5, but after 5, it doesn't matter how many you really put. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is figure out where we're going to put our flowers. Okay, so start off by putting 2 big ones here up at the top here. And remember that your little bud flower is going to take some room. Okay, so you want to maybe pencil in a little bit of a shape of a teardrop in there, and your little tiny bit of a space of your where your bell is going to be. Okay, and then we can put down a actually no, I'm going to flip this one into the other direction. Okay, so what you can do is just grab one of these little sponges and dampen it a little bit, and it works as a great eraser. Okay, so if you see the wet mark on your canvas, make sure that you dry it really well, okay? Because if it's still damp a little bit, your chalk is not going to sit well for you. Okay, so this one here, I want it to actually come up a little bit more of an outside direction. Okay, so one's going to come that way, put the little bell in there, and then we'll pull the stem down into the middle. Okay, and then we can have another one over here, and then this one's going to kind of maybe go a little bit shorter, a little bit straighter out. Put our little bell in there, and then we're going to come straight towards the middle. Okay, so they're all going to come meeting down here in the middle. And you're about 2-3 fingers, depending on how tiny your fingers are. I have chubby fingers, so stay a little bit away from the space sides and the top to give yourself a little bit of a space. Okay, so especially your top and bottom, if you come out a little bit wide on your sides, it's not so bad. Okay, so then we want to put one that's going to come and flip right in the middle here. Okay, so we're going to put one here, put a little bell here. Okay, so it could be a little bit bigger or smaller, and we can always erase this chalk after your paint is dry, so not a big deal. And then we're going to curl this one all the way around and then into the bottom. Okay, and then we're going to put in another one that's going to fly a little bit lower here. Okay, so we don't want it to touch the edge. So to put your flower in there first is probably the safest way of doing things. Right? And then we're going to crisscross this one right over that one and add that one into the center. Okay, and then we're going to want one that's going to flip over onto this side. Okay, so again, our little point in there, around. Sometimes drawing it out helps with size and that shape that you're looking for too. So remember when you're doing those little curves, curve around, imagine that with your brush, okay? And then we're going to put one in like that. So we'll just make these fairly simple, but definitely with some of our advanced tricks there that I'm showing you. Okay, and then this one is going to cross right over and come into here. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit of crisscrossing going on here. Okay, so once you have those in there, then you can definitely figure out where you want to put your leaves. So we definitely want to have one nice big one, okay, a little bit chubby in the middle, and then in the middle there. Okay, so you can make a little bit more of a space. Okay, and you can always use a brush, guys, to do some erasing if you feel like, oh, maybe I made that a little bit too big. Okay, you just use a clean brush, let dry, and then you can always play around, put your chalk lines back in. If you don't like something, erase it. And then it's not permanent, right? So you're just playing around with chalk, and then you can definitely erase if you don't like the shape of it. Okay? Too big or too small. And then we're going to pop one up here, up on the side. And one over here. Okay. And then we'll put some nice big ones up on the side here. Okay, so big one there, here. And then we'll put another one up over here. A little bit higher. And then over here is where we're going to put that flipped one for you. Okay, so we're going to do something a little bit different. That one's a little bit trickier to draw. Okay, so you got your main grassy big stroke there, and then it's going to flip right over. Okay, because this is my easier one to do on this side. So if you feel like you're left-handed and you want to do that on the other side, then just reverse these 3 leaves. Okay, and then put this guy on the other side. So then that way, maybe reverse some things here so that you have a little bit more room. Alright, so just play with it, guys. Make it your own. Alright, and then when it's all dry, then you can go and erase all these other lines. Okay. So now that we have a little bit of placement movement and we have an idea of what we're going to do and where we're going to put it, then definitely now is a good time to pop in a little bit of shimmer. Okay, so you can pick up this your 3/4 if you want, and pick up a little bit of that chocolate brown. And we're going to work with just a little bit of that in there with some floating medium in there. Okay, so we want it to move. Okay, we don't want it too thick. So add a little bit of floating medium in there. And I like just doing it on the one side of my big brush, guys, because this way I can actually just swoop around. So if I want to make it look like a little bit like shadow leaves underneath, you know, I've got the general placement of where I want to put my stuff now. And then definitely we can just swoop around it. Just do some movement so that it looks like it's like windy days and got that little bit of shimmer popping out. That's going to just kind of just follow a little bit of the shape and placement of where you're putting things. Okay, so just kind of pop in a little bit here and there for now. And then if you feel like you want to put more in, then definitely you can put in a little bit more. Okay, so just nice smooth. Okay, lots of floating medium in there so that you can actually see. Oh, maybe there you go. You can kind of see little streaks of movement and little areas that I've popped in. And I'll take a picture of it for you guys at this point and add it into the PDF for you so that you can see a little bit more about where I put my chalk in a picture as well, so you can print that out as well. Okay, so it's just a little bit of streaky movements that I did, and like I said, following a little bit of the shape of the flowers, and then so we can always pop in a little bit more. And this is the thing about this shimmers and color shifts, you know, sometimes you just don't see it too much until you walk around the room and then you catch little hints and bits of it. And then we're also going to add a tiny little bit of that shimmer into the centers of the flowers. Okay, into the little calyx, just in the base here, and add a little bit of pop into our calyx as well, and that's going to help to give it a little bit more blingy look. Alrighty. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is double load our brush. Get 2 colors in there. And I'm just using a plate that I was already playing on. Get that in there really good, like we were before, our practice area. Okay, like I said, it doesn't matter if it's soft or muddy white. Okay, but as long as you can see 2 colors in there, it'll be good. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is pop in all our stems. Right, so we'll start off with the top ones at the back. And you can just come in just underneath where you think you're going to put them. And just for placement and for now, guys, just put your little bit of a drag marks, okay? And then you can always make them a little bit thicker if you want. But, you know, try to get that general size of what you're looking for. And don't worry about dimension right now. Just get that in there and all the way down. Now the chalk might drag the paint a little bit too. It'll actually absorb some of the paint, and you might have to add just a little bit more floating medium to help you get all the way down to the bottom. Okay? And if you feel like you've gotten a little bit too thick in areas, then it's very easy to come in and just kind of erase a little bit and thin it out a little bit before it dries. And then if you do miss any spots that you don't like, that's the nice thing about having the black background, guys, is that you can easily go in with your black after and fix up your line a little bit more too. Okay, so don't worry too much about it right now. As long as you got some coverage and you got the shape that you're looking for, and it's going to go all the way down bottom. Okay, and then we're going to add some more stems back here. Okay, just go slowly. And then you can always go in and make it a little bit thicker. Okay, bring that all the way down. Okay, so they don't have to join these guys here in the middle. You just have to kind of go in the same direction. Okay, a little bit more floating medium. Okay, so the thing about the floating medium is if you put too much, it'll be really translucent, right? Make sure you got enough paint to give you a little bit of coverage. And bring it all the way down nice and straight. Okay, these ones are usually pretty straight unless the wind is taking it. Okay, and then we're going to come up over here. We can always move this guy up a little bit more. Okay, this is just general placement. And we're going to put this one on top. And then with our little extra shading tricks that I'm going to show you, then you're going to be able to define these branches and pop them out and make one look a little bit more in front than the other. Okay, and then we can do this one. This one's going to curl around, and he's going to come right over both of these, and then come in, curl. Okay, so we usually make these just a little bit thicker at the stalk of the base, and then a little bit thinner, and pretty consistent most of the way, and then you can just come out and wisp out a little bit thinner here. This is where most of your leaves are going to sit on top too, bottom here. You can just wisp away to nothing. Okay. And we are going to go over these stems again, so don't worry too much about them right now. We're just getting them in there so we know where they are. And then I'm going to put this guy over here. He's going to cross over, and he's going to probably be behind. Alright, so we'll figure out which one's sitting on which a little bit later. Basically how we put them in. Okay. Straighten that out a little bit. Okay, so once we have our stems in, okay, so you guys, if I'm going too quick for the recording to keep up to me, then definitely stop the video and then carry on when you're ready to put your leaves in, okay? So usually I like to work a little bit strategically too, so that I'm not putting my hand in wet paint all the time. So if you're right-handed, usually you're going to work in a clock formation kind of. You're going to move over and then work your way down a little bit. But if you're left-handed, definitely start with these leaves first, so then that way you won't have your hand in wet paint. Okay, so we've got some of it's being erased a little bit, but that's okay. We can always put that. Right, so we want to start our leaf off of the stem here. And then we're going to bring that around, okay? And I don't have enough floating medium in there because I'm not able to really push my brush out, okay? So again, if we have to fill it in a little bit in the middle and spots, that's okay. We just want to make sure that we have a nice big belly over here, and then put up to the top to a point. And you're going to drag down a little bit, get that little bit of a bump going on at the top, okay? Bit of width, and then carry it in thin, bring it in, okay? Just getting my general shape. Okay, now I can flatten my brush out properly. Right, bring that in there. Pick up some more color if you need it. And definitely, you want to have good coverage here. Okay, so make sure you smooth it out. And a lot of times I'll just leave these leaves the way they are, and I'll do all my leaf placement where I want them. And then if I feel like I need a little bit more coverage, then I'll come back and put another coat on them before I do any more work, okay? And it's just all about taking your time, and especially when you're working on a black background, guys, too, you need to lighten that back up again, right? So again, just get a good coverage in there, make sure your edges are all nice, and then just move on to your next leaf. Okay? We'll get this one done now, a little bit smaller. And push out a little bit. It can overlap a little bit over stem. Push up to your point, and then we're running out of paint. I'm just going to go back to this point again and push it in. Okay, so it's dragging a little bit. I'd rather have little bits and keep adding like this than putting too much paint on your brush, because if you're too globby, then it's not going to look nice either. I prefer to have a little bit more smoother look, right? And then go over it again or add more extra advanced highlights to it to make it look a little bit more realistic or more the coverage I'm looking for. So those extra little pops that I want to make sure that are good. Okay. So sometimes if we're going too fast on our canvas, it doesn't allow to absorb. So make sure sometimes you just got to come over these areas and just slow down a little bit so the paint actually gets in there. Okay. Like I said, don't worry about it too much. All right, and then we'll carry on to the next leaf. Okay, so now I want to actually work on this one. And sometimes when I'm doing the left-handed strokes, like I said, I always like to start on more on the top. Okay, so pull it over to this way so that I can see what I'm doing. Okay, push a little bit more. Drag that over to a nice point. And we're going to flip this over a little bit more so that it has a little bit more of a pointy going out. Okay, then you're just going to drag down straight. Okay, so you got a little bit of a point. Okay. And just as you're getting a little bit thin, then you're going to start pointing out a little bit, straightening out your brush a little bit so that you can get that little bit of fatness going on. Okay, so sometimes we do want to dramatic things a little bit more, so I want to make this leaf really good and big. Now I'm going to actually flip-flop a little bit and just get that paint in there, right? Then you're going to come in with your nice bright white or your dull white again. And then go over the edges again a little bit, right? So as long as you got that dark in the middle, okay, especially when you're doing really big leaves like this, it's okay to kind of just help it along. Okay, you're gonna come up and get around that edge. Okay. And you could use your big 3/4 for this as well, but you know, I've got it in my hand and I'm just making it work, and then I only really want this one really huge one, so. And remember, some of this could be just chalk that's not there. Okay, so make sure you remember that you got chalk there. Okay, and then I'm gonna just flip flop and cover this whole center in just to get the coverage in there. Okay, leaving it nice and dark in the middle. And then I can go over my edge again to smooth out that gradient. Okay. A little bit of an unorthodox one here for you. Okay, sometimes you do that. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that for now, and then I'm going to go over that again, fix my gradient a little bit. Okay, so remember guys, if your blending pile is starting to get too muddy or out of control, grab a new spot so that you can get control of your brush again. Okay, especially if you've been doing a lot of practicing. Okay, so now we lost our little placement of this one, so you can, you know, put your little mark in there again if you want. See what you like. Maybe you want to flip this one out a little bit differently, right? So again, play with your chalk, and it'll really help you see what you like before you commit. Okay, so we're going to come up, follow this around, and make some of them a little chubbier, some of them a little bit longer and skinny. Okay, bring that one down. A little floating medium in there. And now it's letting me slide more. That down. And smooth it out. Not too much floating medium. Hopefully you can see that I put lots. You can see all the ridges. Alright, so again, if it gets too wet, I like doing this kind of stuff in front of you because then it shows you all the things that could happen to you, and then what are you going to do about it to get it out. So just make sure if you are too gloppy, wipe your brush a little bit on a towel and smooth out some of that gloppiness. Just go over it really lightly and just kind of erase some of it off so that you don't have any real big loopy edges. Okay, and just let that be, and then you can come back to it when it dries. Okay, again, we're going to start off up at the top again and just perfect our leaves that we want to make perfect, right? Really want to make sure you got that coverage nice, and you do got to go over things again. It's one stroke, I know, but doesn't mean you can't go over it a couple times, right? What I always say. Okay, and then get that color in there. I'm starting to get thick coffee latte, so I need to get some fresh paint in there too, which is why I'm fighting a little bit more. Okay, so again, helping it smooth this big stroke out, because this is a big stroke, guys. Okay, put in some fresh coffee latte. Are you guys having a coffee latte while you're having some painting? Okay, so fresh paint really makes a difference. Okay. And then again, like I said, I got more tricks to perfect things and add more shading and stuff like that later. Okay, so all we want is a nice coverage with those two colors and some good gradient going on. Okay, so this is what we do sometimes. And I just keep working on to the next one. And go back and visit it again. And fix your little points. If you don't like something, you can always go in with a wet, clean brush and erase. If you go over your lines, your original lines, and just back it up a bit, just erase so it's back on that original track of your line is again. I usually do that somewhere here. Okay, so I went too far over. Okay, that's black in there. Just come in and erase it so that's back on that line that's dry. Okay, so you don't, unless you really want it to get bigger, but then you got to make sure that you have enough paint on there so you still don't see that second line in there. Okay, so just got to take your time, try to go over it. Okay, I'm not using the same pressure as I did the first time, so you definitely want to use that same pressure so that you get the coverage. Right? And it's going to cover a lot better the second time. Okay. Try to get over into half of that leaf. And then come up. Practice what you're doing. Just keep putting that pressure and get it as fat as you can. Okay, so you're using that whole brush. And then all the way down to the bottom to get that coverage. Flip flop a little bit, smooth out that glob in the middle. Smooth up your point, get it nice and smooth. You can see how I play with it, right? Once you see me do designs, then you're like, oh, okay, the practice ain't so bad because, you know, a lot of people put too much pressure on themselves with the practice part, okay? But once you start playing and doing it, you know, then you learn how to improvise a little bit. Okay, hopefully that's chalk. If not, I can always put some black paint on that. Okay. Now these big guy, like I said, we want to make sure we have lots of paint cover us through. Over your stroke again. Get that highlight in there. Okay, because we really want a fair amount of light in there too. So when we start flipping, then they'll give it that nice contrast, right? Want that gradient in there, so that really light coffee latte part, and then having the dark coffee latte in the very, very middle. Okay. That I'm happy with. That side, flip it over. Okay. Try to make sure it's getting in all those little nooks and crannies of the canvas, right? Because sometimes if you go too fast, you see those little skip marks. And if it's black underneath, you'll see all those little holes. So that's what I'm doing is I'm trying to make sure that I have enough fluid in there and coverage and paint to smooth that in there really good and get that coverage in there. I'm going to just follow this over here because I can actually see where my edge is a little bit better. Okay, so sometimes I have to do things a little bit different on the second coat because I'm being so fussy about where that, following that original line again, right? This is a little bit of the tricky part. Okay, add a little bit more floating medium. that floaty medium by itself, and then that helps to blend that right in there. And that nice gradient. Just make sure you're happy with it all. All right. Okay, so when you're ready to do your flipped leaf, then you can add that last. Okay, because sometimes we like to layer that over another leaf. So you definitely want to make sure that this leaf is the way you want it. And then you can play around and add your flipped one. And again, if you want to really make it big, then use your big 3/4 brush, guys, okay? And just have it really nice and skinny at the start. And then halfway through is where you're making it really big. You're going to make it as fat as your brush will take it, okay? And bring that over to that area. Okay, if you're not happy with your coverage at this point, stop. Okay, flip in some more paint if you have to help it. Okay, and we're going to just start at the beginning again, flip that, smooth that out. Okay, so that you have your big fat area right here. Okay, I'm just going to fix this edge here. A little bit of ad-libbing is not going to hurt it. Okay, because I really don't want that big one, so I'm trying to make my 12. A 16 would probably be perfect too. Okay, so you're coming in and then you're just popping up on your chisel where it's coming a little bit skinnier there. This is where you're going to start doing your flip. Okay, so just as you're coming around, you're coming a little bit skinnier up on your chisel. You're going to flip over the other way. I'm not right on my drawing, that's okay. I can make it a little bit smaller. And then flip your leaf over. Okay, I'm going so slow. Sometimes it doesn't come out. Okay, so right up on your chisel. Sometimes I'm using my pinky to pressure myself there. And then press down. Press down as soon as you come over. You're pressing down right away. Slide a little bit down to your point. Okay, so you don't want to come down too far, but enough that it's going to make it look. Okay, just a little bit. Right, so if you don't like the way your points are at this point, like I said, you can always help it a little bit and just erase what you don't like. Okay, move that out a little bit more and just fix it and keep practicing that stroke. And when you do it a little bit quicker, you'll start getting into the groove of it, and definitely you'll be able to, you know, do a little bit in a smoother stroke. Okay, and then we can always go in there and add a little bit of more highlights in there and more shading in there. Okay, so I made sure my first one was done good. Then if I need to just go in and add a little bit more paint, then I can always go in and add another coat. Okay, and like I said, guys, don't try to stress yourself out too much about this one. If you can't do it right away, then or don't want to do it, then don't put it in there. Okay, so I just thought I would throw in something a little bit from both of those designs that I gave you in the PDF. Okay, and then I can always add a little bit more highlights to that to pop that out a little bit more. Okay, smooth that out. Come up. If you have to do it in 2 parts. Okay. And I know in the beginning I had to do a lot in 2 parts. And then as you keep doing it and get comfortable with that little dolphin nose, then you'll be able to do it all in one big swoop and be comfortable with it. Try different size brushes too, guys, okay? So I did try to stretch my 12 out, and but maybe these strokes would be nicer with a 16. But if you have the value set, then you don't have a 16 because they only sell them separately. And then I do have a 16 actually in my signature set I could have been using. But like I said, with this smaller canvas, the size, 12 or 16. If you're doing a 16 by 20, definitely pull out a little bigger brush. Okay, because you're going to be making these guys a lot bigger. Okay, so I don't worry about the stems or flipping them until I get all my flowers in there now. Okay, so now we're going to do that.